Familiarity breeds contempt. Wow, that's a little rough. Let's change that. Familiarity breeds disengagement.
Are you ready to make the most of the only life you have? To make smart money choices focused on achieving what you care about most? Here to help you balance living well today without sacrificing your tomorrow is the Retirement Answer Man, Roger Whitney.
Last Friday, October 6th, was my wife and I's 27th wedding anniversary. Wow, that's a long time. I would happen to be out of town on that day and had a lot of time by myself to reflect on the past 27 years, more than half my life, living life with this lady. And one thing I noticed was that there was a rhythm. You know, when you first get married, it's all about the honeymoon period and building your life together. And then you become more familiar with each other. And it's very easy to become disengaged, especially in this world where we're all living, working, a lot of dual careers. My wife and I were dual career couple. And it's very easy to live this life where you're not connected. And as we became more familiar with each other, we became not contemptuous of each other. That's why I don't think that's correct. We went through periods of becoming more disengaged with each other, lacking the intentionality of nurturing the relationship. And that ebbed and flowed over the 27 years. And I think we've gotten to a good spot now where there's some constant vigilance of not allowing that to happen. Because as you become more familiar with your bride, with anything, it's very easy just to be disengaged, to begin to lack appreciation. And I can see how that could lead to contempt. But it's that constant vigilance of being very intentional about what you're doing that creates a great marriage. But I also think that's something that can create a great relationship if you happen to be working with an advisor. We're going to hit on that in the Hot Topic segment because last week I promised to show you what I think a good meeting should look like with an advisor so there isn't disengagement, which can lead to contempt. But before we do any of that, we need to have that all-important disclaimer. All right, so there's this guy. His name is Roger Whitney, and he has a podcast called The Retirement Answer Man. And I am going to give you an inside tip for when you listen to this show. Here it is. You ready? Don't take advice from him. Not on the show. Not on his blog. Best you think of it as helpful hints and education. Because you know what? This guy, he's pretty smart. He's got a lot of wisdom, he believes. But you know what? All that smartness and wisdom in the world doesn't mean he knows anything about you. So before you make any decisions, talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, and that financial advisor so you can make sure you're getting advice that's tailored to you. Now let's get to the hot topic. Last week, a listener brought up something happening in Colorado Springs. There's an advisor there that had been in the business for 20 years, had a clean record, as far as anybody could tell, and now allegedly has stolen millions of dollars from clients. Man, how could you see that coming? And we talked a little bit about how to protect yourself and the whole concept of trust but verify. And I promised this week to talk about how to make sure you're having quality meetings to help not just protect against that, but to make sure you're getting value for what you're paying an advisor. And it all comes back to this familiarity breeds disengagement, which ultimately can breed contempt. So I have this client that I've worked with for about 20 years now. And he and I have very similar interests. We're outdoor people. We have similar values, family situations, and we really enjoy each other's company. And he lives out of the city. So when I go to where he is, we will generally meet for lunch because he's super busy. He's a doctor. And we have lunch. And what was happening over time at those lunches, where at the beginning we were very engaged and focused on the business part of the relationship, as we became more familiar with each other, it started to pivot to just enjoying each other's company. We talk about our last adventure. We talk about what's going on with our kids, all the things that are, the depth of life, which are important, even in an advice relationship. but are a little bit off agenda. We became too familiar, so we started to disengage from the intentionality from the business aspect of it. And so ultimately what happened with this gentleman is we were like, we can't do this. Okay, we can have lunch because we enjoy each other's company, but we started to schedule 2 meetings. We'd have lunch where we could catch up on the qualitative aspect of each other's life, because that helps paint the kind of advice that he gets. But we made sure we had separate meetings that were pure business. And I think that is essential in an advisor-client relationship. It doesn't matter whether it's your doctor, your dentist, or whoever else. We all have enough friends. We have family. We have pets. We don't need to pay a professional for a relationship. There's a business relationship there. So what we did is we would have our lunch. Then we started doing virtual meetings that were all about business. And that allowed us to make sure that we weren't getting disengaged and we were actually taking action in hopefully improving his life and leading him towards the goals that he and his family cared about. So I think the difference between good or just advice in general and great advice are the quality of the meetings you have if you're using an advisor. And to wrap in the issue with this advisor that allegedly stole all this money, I think if you have quality meetings with your advisor over time, you'll have a lot more familiarity with what's going on with your money, so you can identify those types of things a lot quicker than if you're just engaged. So what kind of meetings should you have with an advisor? Well, let's go through some tips that I would suggest that you try to stick to if you work with an advisor or if you're evaluating whether you should. Number 1 is keep it business. Keep it in a business setting. So office, kitchen table, if it's going to be at your house, separate from the living room or someplace where you're just comfortable. One thing I found that has been really helpful is now that I work with clients in over 20 states, I have the majority of my business meetings virtually. We are on video calls where I can share my screen and do planning, and we can share documents back and forth. But just the idea of having a video meeting, what seems a little impersonal, can actually be really beneficial because it becomes more about business. And you still can see each other and have some social aspect, but it ends up making it a little bit more formal, which I've enjoyed. So number 1 is keep it business. Number 2, have an agenda. Know why you're meeting before you're meeting. So it's not just simply catching up on market conditions and talking about performance and talking about some latest forecast without really anything going on. There's a lot of meetings in any part of life where it's really that way, right? Why are we having this meeting? So have an agenda that's very clear so you know what you're going to discuss beforehand and you know where the meeting is supposed to lead to. And that goes to number 3, which is every meeting should have some actions that come from it based off of the agenda. And we just implemented this year where we send a summary of a meeting with a client. And at the bottom of that is, okay, here are the actions that we agreed upon. These are yours. These are ours. And here are the deadlines so we can start working those action items to take those little baby steps to improving, hopefully, their life and their finances in an intentional way and create some accountability to it. That way, we're always moving forward. So this comes to, if you're going to have a productive or quality meeting with the advisor, how should that meeting be determined? Now, obviously, it's your life. So you're going to bring things that are happening in your life to the meeting that you want to make sure you discuss. But in my humble opinion, part of how those meetings should be run is really the advisor's role to facilitate and guide you to the things that you need to make sure that you're taking care of. They're there to help you find the blind spots because the ideal is they deal with these things all day long. The way I think you should look at planning, whether you're doing it on your own or with an advisor, is that it's an ongoing project that never really gets finished. And so what I've done, I'm really excited about this, and we're going to launch it with clients in January, but I'm already putting in the pieces in place, is created what I call a retirement standard of care. With the idea being that there are certain things that we need to make sure that we're covering, or you need to make sure you're covering to create a great retirement. And it's easy not to cover a lot of those things, right? Because we're busy, we have a life, and it's in those important but never urgent categories. And as an advisor, it's my role to make sure those conversations happen and help guide the client through them. So here's the concept that you'll be hearing more of, but I think is important in this discussion of getting value from an advisor, protecting yourself, but also making sure you have great quality meetings. So the standard of care, the retirement standard of care, has these big rocks, which are your goals. What are we trying to accomplish? trying to identify changes there, and then your cash flow, what you're spending and what your income sources are now and what you see them to be, and constantly probing for risks, but opportunities there too to improve the situation. Your net worth, which are your financials. Where are the risks and opportunities on your balance sheet? The risks in your life, premature death, long-term care, all those types of, scary things. Where are the risks and where are opportunities to mitigate them? And then your legacy, right? Your estate plan. Where are the risks and opportunities there? Those are the big rocks of your life that need to be addressed, not just once in a plan, but in an ongoing fashion because life changes. And then the idea is every meeting will update the goals, make sure where the client is headed. They still want to go, and then their cash flow and looking for risks and opportunities, their net worth, and then review the standard of care to see where we're on standard in terms of the rhythm that we should be reviewing all these different things, and then prioritizing the ones that are off standard so we can take action on those over and over again. So over time, what will happen is we'll know where we're on standard, we'll know where we're off. And from an advisor standpoint, my standpoint, I'll know that we're staying engaged and we're not letting the social, the familiarity take over the relationship. And on the client standpoint, they'll always know where they're at, what the next action is, and have clarity on where their money is. And hopefully that'll avoid worries about contempt and theft and things like that. And then that's about taking little actions, making your life this ongoing project. So I think the secret to great advice is having great meetings. And it's very easy not to because of this familiarity concept that breeds disengagement, which breeds contempt. So hopefully that gives you a framework for how to evaluate your advisor and understand how to make sure you're getting the value for the money that you're paying them. Now let's get to an interesting interview with a boomer who is reinventing himself. I really love it when I see stories of people, especially boomers, that have had a career, have slowly become successful, and then as they enter their 50s, even their 60s, when they've really, got some life experience, and they're dialing in what their joy is and what their reason, what their art is, that they start to walk that direction pretty boldly. And I have a friend, his name is Jeff McManus, that we're going to talk to today. He is the director of landscape services at the University of Mississippi. So he grows plants, but he also grows people because he manages a big team. And as the landscape services director, they've won the equivalent of the national championship for, horticulture, landscaping at the University of Mississippi, meaning that, man, their place looks amazing. And when it's rated, it's typically on top. And he just recently wrote a book entitled Weeders to Leaders, where he talks about how to build leaders using the concept of horticulture and landscaping, because that's what he knows. And I think that's interesting. Another reason why I wanted for us to have this conversation with him is what I think is interesting as well is how he's taking something that he's built a wealth of knowledge over and pivoting a little bit in writing books, speaking, conducting workshops, and he's reinventing himself in a lot of ways. Not totally. He's just taking what he does and creating a newer version of it that is in an area that's important to him. And I like that spirit. And I think it's something that it's good for us to be exposed to so we can always continue to think about what's next in our life. So let's have this conversation with Jeff McManus. So Jeff, now what is your official role at the University of Mississippi?
Well, hey, Roger, my role is the Director of Landscape Services at the University of Mississippi. It's also known as Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. So Now that means you're not the one pulling out the weeds and planting the flowers.
Most of the time I'm not, but I'm willing to do that. We call that, Roger, when we get out there and do that, we call that weeding by example.
That's bad. Now, Ole Miss has won a number of awards for their landscape in terms of the environment, correct?
Yes, we call them actually 5 national championships in landscape services. We've been recognized by USA Today, Newsweek, Professional Grounds Maintenance Society, and Princeton Review. One of those we got twice. And so it's been nice. It's been a great point of pride for our team and for our university.
And the reason you're on the show, because we're not going to talk about landscaping advice, but you can throw that in.
Right.
But you're in your 50s, and you have a very successful career. But you're working at building avenues of gaining more independence in your life going forward. So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about that journey and why you're doing it.
Well, everybody, we want a certain amount of autonomy in our life, freedom. We want to be able to control aspects of our life, and I'm no different. And we needed to be able to do more with less at work. We needed a highly motivated, engaged team. I needed to be able to move on to other projects and be able to do things. I wanted to write some books. I wanted to go out and do speaking. And so in order to make all that work, I had to learn how to do things differently.
Yeah, because all those things they don't seem to have anything to do with what your day job is.
Yeah. So what I try to do, though, is make them feed each other. So the speaking, when I speak, I talk a lot about I don't talk as much on gardening in the leadership world. I talk about how to motivate people and inspire and to develop that intrinsic drive that people are motivated from within. We need people to do things the way we would do them or better when we're not around. And we need people we can trust and empower to do things so that we can move on to other projects, especially busy entrepreneurs and folks. They need to be able to say, okay, you take care of it, and I got to go on to the next project. And that's the kind of people we have now.
So you have a book, Growing Weeders into Leaders.
Yeah.
Good title, by the way. That in speaking, was this a way of keeping what you're doing interesting, or was it just taking it to a whole new level?
Well, it's funny how it really started with first becoming very efficient and proficient in what we did. And we got really good at our systems. I mean, we built some really good systems, but we were still having problems with drama amongst the team. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Draminator, Roger, but the Draminator came and stayed with us a while and providing a lot of chaos in our crews. And I said, there's just got to be a way to take this demotivator of drama and rumors and all these things that are like just putting a real monkey wrench in our production. We got to be able to change this, and I can't keep dealing with it all the time. So we started cultivating a different culture. We started planting seeds of leadership. We started planting seeds of responsibility, of taking ownership, and we really cultivated and started watering those consistently. And that's what really started growing strong, and it actually pushed out a lot of the drama. And the drama actually went away because of the culture we began to cultivate.
And so how does that fit into the book that you wrote? Is that basically the framework for what you used to do that?
Yeah, the book is really a way how to take a team from really last place to first place, how to have more freedom, how to have more time. I mean, as a leader, that's one of the things I needed. And so I laid it out. And what we did, how it came about with a vision, how we took people from a mindset of this is just a paycheck to a passion, how to get them to think beyond just, hey, I'm just here to retire and get a pension, but to actually have a purpose and to go deep inside the core values and tap into their core values and bring those out and let them express those. That it actually ignited their excitement in what they did. And we got people that are pretty excited here, and that's what the book's about, getting people's engaged, and it's all about rowing the boat the same direction with more energy. It allowed me to get on a few other boats and row them as well.
So how does this fit into what you want for you and your family?
Well, I think it fits in really well because we're talking about lifestyle. It's no joke or no secret that I want to be a speaker. I am a speaker, but I want to continue increasing that desire and that passion as time goes along. And when I look at retiring here, that's what I want to be doing and engaging the culture and helping others do what we've done here. I'm already working with companies that are not even landscape companies as an outside job, so to speak, and just having fun. It's really not a job when you're having fun, but I'm doing consulting and really enjoying teaching people about the principles I teach in the book.
So what I like about this, and one reason I wanted to have you on the show, is that you have a very successful day job, right? National championships, right. Beautiful campus, but you're cultivating this other avenue to express yourself and express the wisdom that you had. Is the idea that ultimately this will be what you'll transition to and be your life's purposes after your career starts to wind down? Is that the idea?
Absolutely. I mean, I already have the best setup in the world. I get to, if you think of a person who might have a local community, maybe like a pastor of a church who has a local community that he gets to love on, work with, develop, but then I get to go to other communities as well and evangelize on how to do different things, sort of like a pastor might. But I mean, it's all dealing with leadership, growing people. And so I live both worlds, and I get to carry out my passion of growing the mindset of a weeder into a leader and making that person more of an influence and have a contributing to their life purpose.
Now, when did you start that journey?
I began to get intentional about 2011 is when I really started getting intentional, and I started going to conferences and learning how to speak, joining things like Toastmasters, and began to work on my communication skills and those type of things.
So that's 5-6 years ago. What do you think, I'll use a landscaping term, what do you think made that sprout all of a sudden?
Well, you got to be intentional. If you're going to grow tomatoes, you got to plant tomatoes. And so if you're going to do a speaking business, you got to be intentional about what you do and get around people who need speakers. If you're going to do consulting, you got to let people know what you do. And so I had to learn, I had to grow and water that, so to speak. And
I guess what I'm really getting into, though, Jeff, is what was the initial spark that said, because you had been in landscape forever, why 6 years ago? What was it that said, wow, that made you recognize I need to start pursuing this as well?
I think you're talking about that inner core belief that I had and the passion I have of helping and growing others. I mean, my life vision is growing greatness. It's 2 words. I truly believe that I'm here to help grow people's greatness, to grow, it sounds kind of corny to some people, but growing people's greatness to help them discover some of the things that God has created them for. That's what ignites me.
Did that sort of set on your heart in one moment? Was it a process of realizing it was there, but just not actualized yet?
Yeah, it was a process. It was a process of continually listening to books and CDs about people saying, do you love what you do? Do you love what you do? What is it that you truly love doing? And what I truly love doing is helping grow leaders and developing people's passions that way. And so that ignited me. I started doing that with my team. That's one of the big reasons we were able to turn things around in such a positive way here.
So is it fair to say that that is your passion? And that's very different than being director of landscaping, right? Nobody thinks, I would not guess that if I looked at your title.
You might think that, but for me, it's a very natural growth process. You see, Roger, I grow plants, I grow people, and I grow ideas. And all of that is related to growth. And anything that stops growing does what, Roger? It dies. And so it's all interconnected. If you watch nature, you can learn a lot on how to lead people and how to grow people. So for me, they all go together. They all are intertwined and make a strong cord.
And I think that's the key, right? It doesn't, for you, this is how you express it. And
absolutely.
As we get older, everybody needs to find what it is, and it may be totally outside what their technical title is from a job. It can be anything, really. This just happens to be the thing that's for you, is speaking and teaching.
That's right. It could be other venues, but I just knew God didn't call me to work for 20, 25, 30 years and then retire and go fishing all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I just have this passion inside of me to grow greatness in others.
So let's fast forward a little bit. In your mind's eye, when you quote unquote retire from your day job, and we won't put a date on that, what will you be doing? What does that retirement look like?
I think I'm going to, Roger, be doing more of what I'm doing now, which is working with businesses, working with companies and helping them develop their people, mentoring, I think, with other leaders. I'll be doing speaking, and I'll probably have a pretty good online presence. I have some things developing now with online courses and some aspects. We do a thing called Landscape University. That will go with me as well. So I've got some exciting things that I've planted and watering. And as I retire from here or transition from Ole Miss, that's what the crop looks like for down the road, the future.
And the key there is that you're planting and nurturing those seeds now.
That's right.
Not the day before you think you want to do it.
That's right. You got to look big picture. You got to stop. You got to stop and look. What does the next 10 years? Successful people make plans for 5 years and 10 years and even 20 years out. Now, it doesn't mean that your plans can't change, but they're making plans.
So when the seed was first planted, you talked about joining Toastmasters. How did you intentionally start to gain some of the skills or the mindset to walk this journey?
I believe to be a learner, to always be open to new ideas, that I don't have it all figured out, that none of us have it all figured out, but be willing to be coached, be coachable, and then accept that role to whatever it is that God's called me. If He's called me to work one-on-one with a frontline guy, then do it. he's just as important as working with a CEO that I may be working with who's running a multi-million-dollar company. And so whatever God calls me to do it with all my heart and passion. And man, it's amazing when you're doing those type of things that you're called to do. The excitement that it brings in life and passion is like nothing else.
And then how did you build a network of people that supported that journey? Because I imagine when this all started, you may not have known a lot of speakers or people that were doing things that you wanted to do.
You got to put yourself where they are. It's like if you want to go fishing, you got to go to where the fish are. And so if you're going to do speaking, you need to go or interact with people who know how to speak. You got to go where they are. So I've gone to conferences, joined mastermind group, go to the library and check out books, listen to a lot of books, but just get around people who are in this space.
And so when was the first time that you went to a conference outside of your specialty, outside of landscaping? Do you recall?
Probably around 2010, 2011, I started looking at some marketing things and how to do that. I went to a conference in Ohio on social media marketing, and then went to a Kent Julian boot camp, speakers boot camp in Atlanta around 2011. Started learning how to do speaking and how to do marketing. So, that wasn't necessarily related to agriculture or horticulture. It was a different venue.
So when you went to those, did you know anybody there, or did you just go on your own?
Went on my own.
That can be intimidating.
Absolutely. But, you're there to learn. So is everybody else. And you force yourself out of the hotel room. You can't sit there and shove your hands down in your pocket and go, gee whiz, I don't know anybody. Nobody's talking to me. I learned from a great mentor of mine here, Dr. Robert Kayat, that everybody is a little insecure and nobody feels super confident about saying hello. So be the first one. Go ahead and just reach out and say, hello, my name's Jeff McManus. And then just interview them, ask them questions and just get to know them and play tennis. When they ask you a question, answer it, give them a question, and then get to know people. And that's been a very successful formula for me in getting to know people.
So when does Growing Weeders into Leaders come out? Because I know it's still in pre-order.
Yeah, I'm excited, Roger. I'm so excited about the book. It's actually going to release on September 5th. You can do pre-orders now through Amazon. It's there and would love for folks to join in on that and be a part of that.
And my guess is, and I haven't had a chance to read the advanced copy yet, is that it's talking about building leaders and building teams, but I'm thinking a lot of that can be applied to ourselves in planting seeds to where we want to be 10, 15 years from now.
Well, absolutely. You're right. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, I did what I'm doing for myself with a team. And so, yeah, it's about building yourself. It's about getting yourself to the next level and taking the courage. I mean, just some of the little things we did around here, I was scared to death to do. And it takes a little bit of courage to do these. So if you read about it, you get a little bit more encouragement to go ahead and step out and do some of these things.
Great. Jeff, thanks for sharing your journey.
Roger, love being with you. Thanks for having me.
A week or so ago, I had my book delivered to me. I actually have paperback, but a physical book in my hand, and from the portions that I've read, because I haven't looked at it in a while, it's not that bad. But I didn't just have my book delivered to me, and this is why I have this in the Happy Lab. A while ago, I had an episode about being full cheetah, right? A cheetah, when it's running, it's not thinking about the past or the future. It's just all in. So when the publisher emailed me and said, okay, the book's ready, and reminded me that I contractually have to buy like 2,500 copies, and you can buy those over a couple years, I said, you know what? I wonder what 2,500 books look like. So I had them all sent to me. And the other week, they showed up. This truck came, 2 pallets of boxes with books. And I happened to have some family in town, and they all joined me to unload them and put them in our dining room area. And I gave my first signed copy to the delivery lady, and her response was hilarious. And I videoed that, so I'll figure out how to share the video in 6 Shot Saturday. It was like 1,900 pounds of books. Here's my point. I'm so glad that I did that. I worked hard on the book, 4 years. Why not? Just go full cheetah and see what it looks like. So my question is to you, what is it that you can do that doesn't make any practical sense, but can be a great joy? Find out what it is, and you know what? Go do it. Live full cheetah.
On your marks, get set.
Okay, here we are at the end of the third quarter, 2017. So here is your action item for the next 7 days. If you work with an advisor, you'll likely be having a quarterly meeting. So evaluate how that quarterly meeting is being run from the lens of what we talked about today to have an idea of whether the familiarity or the personal side is getting too strong, so you can have a good little conversation to correct that so you can make sure you guys are being intentional. If you don't work with an advisor, you still have an action item. You're not off the hook. Evaluate your meeting with yourself or with your spouse and evaluate how businesslike is that meeting. Without a third party, are you still being businesslike and intentional about the decisions you need to make between now and the end of the year? So that's your action item. Go do it. Do you want retirement advice? Do you want someone to walk that journey into retirement and make sure you're having the right little conversations? I'm currently accepting clients. We have room in our practice for you and I to possibly work together. If that's of interest to you, go to rogerwhitney.com, click on Work with Roger, and we can set up a time to talk. Regardless, I feel so lucky that you and I get to spend this time together to noodle on not just creating a great retirement, but creating a great life.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.
So last week I was at a conference and I had a couple copies of my book because I had just got them. And I was interviewing Michael Kitces on stage. He's been on the show. He's a prolific writer and student of the financial planning industry. And he was nice enough to put a blurb in the book saying how good the book is. And so I got to give him a copy. And I think that was, other than the delivery driver, that was the first copy I had given out to someone who I respect greatly as an industry expert. And it was a little intimidating. And I think it's going to be interesting when you listeners get your hands on the book, because there's so many things when I look at it that I would already change. Right? There are so many things that, wow, I should have said it that way. That's too light. Why did I say that? That's silly. And that's that self-criticism that we all have. And so putting this imperfect book into your hands, or into Michael Kitces' hands in this case, it's a little intimidating. You know, you have that voice in your head that says, what if it sucks? Everybody's going to see it, they're going to have it, and they're going to know that it sucks. I don't think it does. But we all have that fear either way, but I thought that was sort of funny. So hopefully Michael likes it. Hopefully you like it. Stay tuned. You know, Nicole and I, we have a world domination meeting every month where we get together, and that's just a fun term we use. We get together and we try to figure out, okay, what's a really important but not urgent item that we could act on to create a better experience for clients, or create a better show sometimes. And this one is, a lot of it's going to be, what do we do with all these books? How do we, quote unquote, launch the book? Because technically it doesn't come out until March of 2018 in terms of being bought in stores, but I can do something with all the books that I have. So we're going to noodle on how to do that. And it's not about selling books, because I'm going to be honest with you, you really don't make any money selling books. I wrote the book not to make money on the book. I wrote the book because it helped clarify my thinking, and it was an iteration that helped lead to agile retirement management, the process that I use. It helped lead to the retirement standard of care, which is coming. You know, so from a personal level, that was a lot of reasons why I wrote the book. But another reason is I think it's an important message, and it's another way of getting it out to hopefully help impact people and how they live their life. So it's going to be interesting to see. So I can't wait for you to have it so you can tell me what you think, the good, bad, and the ugly. You guys have a great week, okay?